Is the standard of what we expect from government too high? How limited are our choices to change the state of society and government? Well, these are some of the questions that we'll be dealing with on this week's episode of Future Possibilities. Roll that intro.
I'm walking with you. We're in this complicated thing we call life.
We will begin with our first aspect, society. So, according to a scholar, Henry Tiskler, I'm not sure how that name is pronounced, but I'll write it down. He defines society as a grouping of people who share the same territory and a common culture. So, the first question that we'll ask is, how is a society formed? Because we need to understand the origin of society, or what is the theory around how a society is formed for us to look at society through the correct lens. So, I'll start off by explaining a certain theory, philosophical theory, called the social contract theory. The social contract theory argues that individuals have consented to give up certain natural rights of theirs to protect other freedoms, and they have consented to be governed by a government to maintain social order. Now let's dive into that definition a little more. So firstly, what are they consenting to? Individuals are forming a contract. At least we know a contract, to that analogy of how you form a contract. You set down terms and you say we'll be governed by these terms in our transactions or in our interactions. So, the social contract theory says this is how society is formed. Individuals come together, agreeing to give up certain rights that they have so that they can protect other freedoms that they have, and they consent to be governed by an authority. So the social contract theory assumes certain things. One, human beings have inherent rights. Before we look at the question of inherent rights, we first have to look at the aspect of value. Are human beings intrinsically valued? Do they have intrinsic value, or are they given value? Let me give an example of money. A 50 kwacha note, does it have inherent value, or is the value given? And some might say, oh wait, it's a 50 kwacha note, it has inherent value. But then if you look at it, it's just a piece of paper. No one can eat that piece of paper. No one can grow that piece of paper in terms of planting it in the garden. It's just a piece of paper. The note itself is a representation of a certain value. So the paper that is labeled the 50 kwacha note then is given value and is not intrinsically valued, because all it is just a paper. So then we come to the question of human beings. Are human beings given value, or are they intrinsically valuable? So I remember in my introduction I mentioned that we can't run away from the fact that certain things would have to be looked at from different points of view. So the relative school of thought, right? The relativists, they argue that human beings are the ones who formed everything. There's no absolute truth, right? So meaning that even the aspect that life has value would be then just relative. Some people would believe it has value, some people would not, because nothing is absolute. So meaning that human beings are not intrinsically valuable. They are just like any other animal. Do we say that lions have rights where a lion can come and sue you for certain things? No, we can't. Would we argue that the natural rights are based on rationality? Some people might argue that. However, I don't think rationality is enough to say that if someone is smarter or can think better or faster or more intelligent than another, then that person has got more value than the other. And that's where the problem with rationality comes in. So from my point of view, human beings were made in God's image. So the fact that they were made in God's image, they were valuable. That's why they have natural rights. They have the right to life. We can't just kill any human being. God would punish a person for murder, but he would not punish a person for killing a cow. So that aspect of human beings having intrinsic value, that's where the social contract theorists argue that human beings have natural rights, certain rights in them: the right to liberty, the right to life, the right to property, right? The right to protect themselves, the right to feed themselves. They have all those rights that human beings have. So that's one of the assumptions that the social contract theory makes, that from the basis of their rights, if they enforce the full extent of their rights, the state of nature would be chaotic, because there's the aspect of balancing rights that we deal with when we're dealing with aspects of law. Human rights, we want to balance rights because certain rights interact. Now let's look at this. I have the right to life and someone is attacking me. They also have the right to life. So this is where you see some of the natural rights interacting. So I have the right to life, the other person has the right to life. I have the right to preserve my life, the other person has the right to preserve their life. So if they attack me, if I kill them, I'd be taking away their right to life. However, I also have the right to preserve myself. So if he's attacking me, there are these two rights that are interacting. The right to preserve your life and the right to life itself. So therefore, you have to balance it. That's where the defense of self-defense comes in. You are allowed legally that if someone attacks you and you take their life, that you are not liable for that life taken. So the state of nature, they, according to them, argue that if everyone enforces their rights to the full extent of those rights, it would be chaotic. Because someone takes my property, I can kill them, right? I can punish them myself because those are my rights. I have that right to my property. I have my right to deal with the offender as I see fit. So they argue that because of the full extent of natural rights, nature would be chaotic. So on the basis that nature would be chaotic because of people enforcing the full extent of their rights, people come together because they're rational thinking and they understand that nature is chaotic. They come together and say, we'll live together. We'll live together and give up some of our rights, in particularly the right to enforce their rights. So if someone steals your property, you don't go after them and beat them to death, or you don't go after them and punish them the way you are. You've given up that right and you have set an authority in place. So that was the first aspect of the social contract definition, was that they have consented to give up some of their rights, which is the right to enforce their rights. The other aspect was that they have chosen to be governed by a certain authority. So since I can't enforce certain rights of mine, I haven't given them up completely. I have given them to an authority to enforce them for me. So if a thief comes and steals from me, I'm not chasing after the thief and getting them and beating them and punishing them, then letting them go. I'm calling the police, who have been instituted as an authority over the society that has been placed. So that's the argument of the social contract theory. That's how a society is formed. People come together, agree to be governed by certain terms, and place an authority in power that will run the society based on the terms agreed. So society formed by people, not formed by authority. Which one comes first, the authority or society? It's society that comes first, choosing how they want to be governed by. So that is the social contract theory. Now, why is that important to understand? It tells you that when you're looking at the aspects of society and government, the government exists because of society, and the government's existence is based on the agreed terms of the society. The agreed terms of what the society chooses to be governed by is what forms that government. When individuals come together, they want security, they want to be safe, they want certain rights of theirs protected. So they come together, form the social contract for their benefit. Now this is where it needs to be noted. Society is formed for the individual's benefit. That's why societies are formed, according to the social contract theory. So to some extent you can argue that that is not absolutely true, because there are certain societies formed by force, right? By coup d'etats or colonialism or conquering a nation. However, the idea that should be had, if we want to progress to better heights or better future possibilities, is that the existence of society was made for the protection and safety for the individuals in that society. The terms of the social contract are for the individual's benefit, and that's something that we have to notice. Because then you can ask the question, are you benefiting from this society? If you're not, then you can relook at the terms of the social contract. It is also argued that the government is actually not one of the parties to the social contract. The contract was formed by the individuals and then a government was established. So the government was not one of the parties, meaning that the government is only legitimate if it abides by the terms of the social contract because it has been put in charge of that social contract. So the government was placed for the benefit of the individuals to enforce what was written in the social contract. Therefore, if we're not happy with the way the government is being run, it's on us because we are the ones who are supposed to have agreed on how we should run government or how the authority that's in place will run society. So we have talked about how society is formed, the social contract theory. Based on that theory, human beings come together, set out terms that they'll be governed by and place those terms in the hands of an authority.